It's the Kyle Hyman Show on Redeemer Radio.
This is Kyle Hyman. I am here with Cindy Black, our executive director here at Redeemer Radio for Theology of the Body Thursday. Thanks for being here, Cindy.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, Theology of the Body, so much we can learn about our bodies because God made our bodies and they were made for a purpose. And so part of our job is to figure out what our purpose is here. And we were talking about education and schools and how it sometimes seems like we've gotten into a routine in education of memorize and regurgitate so that you can pass a test and get a grade, rather than really preparing kids for problem solving, for being creative and coming up with solutions to problems. Obviously, we need to have you need to know your math facts. Right. To be able to, anything from like giving change at the grocery store or whatever. But so there's a lot of foundational things that are good to have, but somewhat of a concern that as time goes on, it seems like there's the first thing to lose funding is the arts. You know, those things that are fostering creativity, that are teaching people that a little bit more than just memorize this and then repeat it back to me, which at least in high school, a lot of that I feel like becomes short-term memory. Right. A lot of that
cram.
stuff.
If you're cramming for a test and getting it in your short term just to regurgitate, you're not going to retain it. And how is that actually going to help you in the long run? Yeah. If a week later you can't talk intelligently about it because you've forgotten, forgotten the basic principles. And I think that there is a lot of truth to that. If we look at, looking at theology of the body, it comes from the standpoint that the human person is uniquely made in the image and likeness of God. Right. And if we look at the attributes of God that we share, first and foremost, creativity. God is the creator of all things. Right. And he shares that creative power with the human person. So that ability to create, not only procreate and cooperate with new people, but also to use our creative powers to be able to solve problems and create beauty and things like that. The other part with the revelation that God is a triune God, we have Father, Son, and Holy Spirit giving to each other and, making self-gift and receiving one another in this eternal, perpetual love relationship, then the human person is naturally a collaborator. We're built for relationships. That creativity stems from that love that flows between us. So much of if you look throughout history, creativity helps us to interpret the world around us and helps us to solve problems in ways as we encounter them. So really the importance of the human imagination, the question what if, or is there an easier way to do this, or is there a better way to do this? Right. Fosters, invention. Yeah.
I was thinking, if you go back to the time of Christ, or really probably any time before the Industrial Revolution, people's occupations were to create things, to grow things, to build things, to make things, and then sell or trade them with other people. And so you would be working all day, either on a farm or, maybe making clothing or helping somebody build a house or whatever. And that was your trade. You were using that creativity. You were thinking creatively, how can I make something for another person that's going to help them? And it's not until we start having factories, I feel like, this is my own uneducated, I'm not a anthropologist or anything like that.
Right, and let me throw in a disclaimer too. I am not an expert at education or anything like that. So we're going to be talking about things. I did research, and I do have some expert, an article that we'll share in the show notes and stuff. But anyway,
throwing out some ideas, some thoughts, some things to think about and talk about. So once we have factories, then people are no longer able to or even welcome to be creative. It's you do this task and basically turning people into what now we would have robots do. And that's part of the issue is now we've created a job that robots can do before robots existed. Mm-hmm. And now robots can do that job because it takes no creativity. It's just do what I tell you to do. Right. And we made people into these little factory workers, which obviously provided a great income for many people and a great generation. But I feel like the school system seemed to have been tailored to that process, that we give you this worksheet, you do the worksheet, and kind of do what we tell you to, and not really engaging people to think creatively, think critically, and coming up with solutions to problems, but rather just sit in your seat, do what I tell you to, and you'll get a good grade. Which worked great for whenever they go into the factories because that's what they were supposed to do. Sit in your seat, do what I tell you to, you'll get a paycheck. And now that robots can do that same task, I think we're left with a generation saying, okay, I'm going to school. What am I going to do with this education? How am I going to use this in the world? And we need people to be creative. We need people to come up with new ideas, and that's how we're going to evolve as a human race.
Right. And I think going back to each of us is created uniquely, that some of us as students will be more gifted intellectually than others, but some will have more compassionate hearts. Some will be more insightful. Some will be more creative. Some will possess specific skills like motor skills. Mm-hmm. And looking at those all as important contributions to our world, that just the intellect. And in this article, which we'll post, basically it was an article by Reverend James Shaw, who's a Jesuit priest. There's so many beautiful insights about the specifically Catholic education, mm-hmm. and how our education really has to be rooted in the person of Christ. That if our Catholic schools are not fostering Catholic intellects, Catholic wills, Catholic imagination, and Catholic memories, they really are failing to be Catholic. If somebody has really strong intellectual skills, but is not compassionate, isn't taught compassion, so the natural tendency is towards the intellect, mm-hmm. but then, so the school should be rounding out and helping that person to apply compassion to that intellect. Whereas vice versa, say somebody, is very emotionally mature, but doesn't have the intellect to process and make sound judgments. Mm-hmm. Education really should be fostering the natural gifts, but then also helping to balance out that natural gift with the virtues.
Yeah. I was thinking about some examples. We've been doing the Catholic Schools Week broadcasts, mm-hmm. and two kind of come to mind. One is Sacred Heart Warsaw. They had so many kids that were involved in the Lego Club, which I don't know what they do in the Lego Club, but I imagine they're just building things with Legos. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's probably not like any rules of what you have to build, and it's probably not following directions to make the car that came in the kit. It's probably just a bunch of Legos that they're building something, being creative, and so they're fostering that in the kids outside of the classroom, but mm-hmm. giving them a chance to do that. And the other one was Bishop Dwenger, and I think maybe all of our Catholic high schools do this, but they have discussion-based classes where the grade isn't necessarily based, as far as I understood, the grade wasn't necessarily based on getting the questions right, but engaging in a discussion and in participating in having a discussion about something. It doesn't matter if you agree with me or not. Yeah. Like, let's talk about it, mm-hmm. and welcoming other thoughts, other viewpoints, mm-hmm. and to have those talks. And I think those are important things, and not saying that we're going to stop doing spelling tests or stop teaching kids how to read or do math. No, those things are very important and are going to help you obviously in the future. But to also have opportunities for and encouraging, and not to think of art class as like another recess. Mm-hmm. Right. But it's actually an opportunity to teach people to express themselves in different ways and to think outside the box and mm-hmm. to try things. And, unfortunately, so many, because even art classes are trying to teach theory, so oftentimes
they have to create a certain project a certain way. So there is still kind of that direction that sometimes can lean towards one sense of giftedness versus another, one way of doing things. Probably a lot of our listeners are not aware that prior to getting involved in ministry, I taught at 2 colleges. Mm-hmm. So I taught part-time at the time it was IPFW, now it's PFW, and Manchester College. And when I would write my exams for my students, because I had to give 3 exams as part of their grade, the classes that I taught, not all the classes that I taught, but I taught communications in the fundamental class. We did have to have 3 exams during the course of a semester. And I purposely wrote my exams in a way students would kind of get really anxious if it wasn't multiple choice or true false. If they thought it was going to be all essay, they would kind of panic and freak out. So I would do multiple choice and true false, but I would allow them to explain why they think it's that answer. Because I always struggled with tests when I would come to multiple choice. I'm like, well, if this word means this, then it could be A. Yeah. But if they're thinking about it in this context, it could be C. Yeah. So I would actually allow them to write that into the exam so that it wasn't just trying to figure out what I'm getting at, but they were actually able to articulate their grasp or understanding of the concept.
Yeah. I think the other thing that we need to be careful about too, with whether at school or at home or whatever, is to not, and I think I see this in my kids, they're so afraid to fail. They're afraid to make a mistake. They don't want to get something wrong. Sometimes they don't even want to go up and bat at baseball because they might miss the ball. But if you look at any successful business, any successful corporation, there is so, look at Google. So many things have failed for Google. But as a company, they're successful because they're trying new things. And if it doesn't work, stop it, redirect. And I said Google, and now my phone is getting all excited. So many chapters each night. But yeah, always listening. Yeah. Thank you very much. But to encourage trying things and taking risks and things like that, which I don't know, the regular testing system doesn't encourage that.
Right.
But, so maybe augmenting some of these regular things that state might require, mandate, and accreditation and everything like that, with opportunities for exploration, trial and error, failure, creativity, and things like that.
Absolutely.
So. All right. Well, thank you again, Cindy, for another Theology of the Body Thursday. Appreciate it.